Perfect. There we are, we're recording. So welcome everyone to the next episode of my science podcast, and today I am proud to welcome Dr. Pierre-Michel Forget of the Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle in France, sorry about my French, who is a renowned expert on the interdependency between rainforest trees and seed dispersers. The author of dozens of papers on tropical rainforest ecology, Dr. Forget is increasingly concerned about deforestation and biodiversity loss in forests of the Guiana Shield region of northern South America. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor to speak to the future, but not really the future. You're the generation now.
So to start off, please may you give us an overview of your career?
Oh yeah, my career started, I was something like 23, I would say, when I first really joined the University of Sorbonne, that is formerly the University of Pierre and Marie Curie, and the number was a number 6. We used to have a university numbered. There was a 6th one. It's a University of Science in Paris. I'm from Paris. I was born in Northern Africa, but I'm from Paris. I really grew up there. And so I started studying how we could use morphological traits of trees. That means trunk, roots, bark, leaves, and from French Guiana, in order to rapidly and easily identify species. So my career really started with trees, and then I finished my master, what we call in the old time diplôme d'études, in '84. That was really the beginning of my career. And when I was finishing this, I met a group of doctors in medicine who were starting to develop programs using computer. So in fact, I end up to work on the identification of trees using computer. And so just for you, new generation, I'd like to remind you that in this time we were using computer which were so slow. We were using Commodore 64, was built in '82. And 64, that means they had 64 kilo-octet. Can you imagine that? And later I used an IBM PC XT. I was one of the first in France to use such a computer. It was very expensive, and I was lucky to have at home. My father had a company, and then I could use a computer. So I used a computer very early. And then I moved to the real world, the world without computers, a world without modern way of life. And I moved to ecology in French Guiana. I like to say Guyane, in fact, and you should not misname this compared to Guyana. So there's Guyana, there's Suriname, and there's Guyane, with my French accent. So I moved in '84 to Guyane for 3 years, and I did my PhD there, and I studied the dispersal and recruitment of trees between '84 and '88. And I obtained my PhD. Then I did a postdoc, which is a contract of researcher after your thesis. And normally you are like 27, 28. I was quite young to obtaining this postdoc, whereas normally in the US system, for instance, people are like 35, 40, they are older. So I was quite young, and I started to work with on the role of rodents and how they disperse seeds. So I moved from botany to zoology. I came back in '90. It was a very strange period. When you start a career, there's war in the Gulf. There was the invasion of Panama by US troops, and I was there in the middle of that. So I came back to France after. And after three years, I worked with an NGO, which was the Fondation Nicolas Hulot, that you might know because he's well known as a Minister of the Environment in French. But he used to be a journalist, and he had founded a foundation. So I worked for 4 years, and then by chance, I would say, I joined the museum, and I'm still at the museum now since '94. So I've been lecturer, you call that lecturer, and I moved through the different steps to professorship. So I'm professor of tropical ecology at the museum Naturelle, Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle. Voilà.
Amazing.
Voila.
Thank you very much. So my next question is, may you describe the mutualistic relationship between Vuacapua americana and caviomorph rodents that you've been studying?
Yeah. The relation is something very peculiar to the tropics. In general, when you are in UK, you know that very well. In UK, many people studied that. They studied the dispersal of seeds by squirrels and oaks, for instance. Oaks is well known to be dispersed by squirrels, and the squirrels they are catching the seeds, large seeds like oaks, nuts in general, between September, October, November, ahead of the winter, and so they can catch the seeds and feed on them during the winter season and beginning of spring, before they have resources. So they somehow hibernate, they stay in their burrow, and they eat the seeds. Some species do hibernate and stock nutrients in their body, and then they use the fat from the body throughout the winter. In contrast, in the tropics, there is no winter in terms of cold temperature. Its temperature is about 18, 20 degrees minimum. And so there's not really a season of a cold season. And so we might think that animals have food all year long, but it's not the case. As in the temperate zone, animals are starving at some point, and so they evolve different behaviors to complement their diet. Many animals are eating fruits, and suddenly they will eat leaves, they will eat flowers, they will eat insects, they will eat meat, for instance, and they will have a diet that is quite diverse. In the case of rodents, and especially the caviomorph rodents, which are the big capybarae, that are the small rodent, cochon d'Inde, guinea pigs. Guinea pigs. There's a family of caviomorph rodents. So all these rodents, they have some of these rodents do catch the seeds just as squirrels do in the temperate. And they will do that at a certain time of the year, which is not the fall, because there's no fall. Since there's no winter, there's no fall, there's no spring, there's no summer. You only have a wet and dry season. And depending on countries, this wet or dry season are of different length, sorry. So the relationship between Vuacapua and caviomorph is that when there's a lot of fruits of Vuacapua, and that especially in those mast fruiting years, like oaks are masting the same way Vuacapua trees are masting, and from April to May, June, they fruit a lot every 3-4 years, and this food is in excess. So rodents will start to catch the seeds in order to retrieve them later on.
Yeah, and that benefits the trees because then it limits the competition between the tree who's dispersing the seeds and the trees that are about to grow, and it stops the insects or the moths that are going to give them maybe diseases that might have come from the tree. And so that's really going to benefit the tree as well as the rodents.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's what we call mutualism. So on the one hand, the rodents is caching, dispersing the seeds, so taking away from the proximity of, taking away the seeds from the proximity of the adult, and in an environment that is more favorable to germination, and at the same time, they allow the seeds to escape predators that are concentrating on the food that is abundant beneath the trees.
Yeah.
So, and by dispersing the seeds, then they promote regeneration. So you have a very good mutualistic system between a tree and a rodent. But it's not every year, it's only every 3 or 4 years. But it works very well, just as it works very well for squirrels and oaks.
Yeah. So why do you think that the rodents preferred ungerminated seeds and had no interest in germinated ones?
Oh, yeah. The rodents, as I said, they have to catch the seeds. So seeds to be cached should not germinate before being cached. So they will select seeds that are not germinated. That means seeds that is still, I would say, still in the same state regarding nutrient content. So when the seeds is germinating, the content change at the same time. Some seeds are more rich in glucids, more richer in lipids or in protein. So when a seed is glucid rich, with germination, these glucids deteriorate very quickly. So they are not good anymore for them. That's why, in fact, if the seeds of Wakapua, for instance, germinate, they are not good anymore and they just abandon them.
Yeah.
On the contrary, for some seeds, which are rich in lipid, seeds are not germinating, and so they can store them for long term.
So there's rapid exhaustion of the endosperm reserves. Yeah. So why did seed dispersal rates of Carapa procera increase during the late wet season?
Carapa, just to make the link with Wakapua, they are fruiting at the same time.
Yeah.
But Carapa procera here, which is not anymore procera, it is surinamensis now in the neotropics. Procera is a name that is used for African Carapa.
Right.
And so this Carapa surinamensis. It's just a detail, it's not that important. So the Carapas are fruiting at the same time as Wakapua. And they fruit when there's abundance of resource in the forest, of large seeds especially, and during the rain season, which is between February, March, April, May. So when the seeds are abundant, sometimes the animals are really saturated, so they start to cache, but they abandon a part of them. They are saturated. We call that satiated. And then the extra of seeds is used by pigs or other rodents to feed. So very quickly, there's less and less resources in a forest overall. But just beneath the Carapa, there's a lot of seeds. And it happened that there's a lot of seeds at the end of the wet season. So instead of leaving the seeds for others, they start to catch a lot. So you could, I did experiments where you set the seeds on the ground and you come back just at midday, you set them at 6 before they are active. And then you come back at, let's say, 11 midday, and they are all gone. It's like this. They go and they just catch them crazy. You know this scrat. I like scrat. Scrat is exactly that. It's just crazy of Carapa. So scrat is arriving and see, what can I do? I'm not going to. So it's just they catch the seeds everywhere. So that's why seeds are not staying a long time on the ground. But at the same time, later they come back.
Yeah. So what is this scatter hoarding behavior influenced by? Is it from competition or is it more hormonal?
Scatterhoarding is something that is really innate. There's many animals that are hoarding foods in general. We know that very well. You have carnivores are storing meat. Insects are storing honey, and rodents are storing seeds. We think it's related to their internal state. It means more the way they are hungry. So at some point, I would say there's not enough food, and suddenly they arrive and they say, "Wow, there's a lot of food there." So I like to imagine that, for instance, you search for some sugar. No shop, there's no sugar in first shop, second shop, third shop. Oh wow! And then at fourth shop, plenty of sugar. You say, "Oh, I'm going to buy more than I need." It's quite a little bit centered, but I think it's something the animals feel. Suddenly they realize there's a lot of food, so instead of leaving the food, they just cache it. So it could be competition, indeed, because they say, "Oh, there's another rodent here, another rodent here. No, they're not going to take my food. So take everything." And it could be hormonal. We think we observe that female that are feeding babies, offspring, they might catch more than the male. And it could be also food abundance, because there's a lot of food on one spot, but nothing else elsewhere. So there's many reasons. We are still working on that.
So as you just touched on there, how could the sexual activity and agonistic behavior of the rodents affect the monthly variation in seed dispersal?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's still not tested in the field. In fact, in the tropics, we are still wondering how behavior can be triggering this activity. What I observe is on Barro Colorado Island in Panama, that in a dry season, the rodents they mate in the early fruit season, which is a dry season there, and they have offspring. And so it's very interesting because it appears that there's less competition at some point, so they are caching. They are all caching the food, but sometimes we think that they might also cache for in order to, or it's adapted to feed the young one, for instance. So in a sense, that's the amount of food might break the relationship. So at some point, when it's early fruit season, the first thing is to eat. And then when there's a lot of fruit, then they start to mate. And then there's extra food. They had the baby in between, and then they can feed the young. So that is the idea. Nobody really tested it so far because it's very difficult to test in the field. You have to, well, these animals we're studying are very big. They are 6-7 kilos sometimes. No, up to 6 kilos. But in Panama, they are 3-4 kilos. They are not mice. It's not easy.
Yeah. So how do the scatter hoarding behaviors of what you've studied, the red acuchi and the red-rumped agouti, how do they differ from each other?
Oh, yeah. We have to understand that agoutis and akushis, you have akushis, you have the, I think it's a red akushis that you have in Oxford. It's from the Peru. In fact, in the Guianas, we have the brown akushi. It's another one, but a close species anyway. And so they are very small compared to agoutis. First thing, an akushi is 0.7, 0.8 kilo, whereas an agouti can be between 3 and 4 kilos. So they are very different species. I mean, very different genera and different animal in the forest. They are not using the same type of habitat. But in fact, their behavior is the same. They really do the same. Just as if you observe the squirrels, different species of squirrel, they will just catch the same way. The difference between akushis and agoutis might be the size of the seeds they are able to carry, to catch, because of course, one is 4 to 5 times bigger than the other.
Yeah.
And also, one point might be that the red akushi, or the akushis in general, will bury the seeds less deep than the agoutis, because when they dig the ground like that, of course, if you have small arm or forearm, then of course, no harm or for, I don't remember the word in English, the first part, the front forearm, yeah. It's shorter, so in fact, you dig less deep than an agoutis. So that could be the difference.
Brilliant. May you explain the threshold of the giving up density of cash seeds for our listeners?
What do you mean by giving up density here?
In one of your papers that I read,
yes,
you had this threshold of the giving up density and how this relates to how much they cache and
their behaviors. Okay, yeah. The ratio between cache and it's about the ratio of number of seeds that they will eat versus the number of seeds that they will cache.
Yeah.
So it's I would say they will eat more or less the same amount all the time throughout the season. And as I said before, depending on what is available in the forest, then they will start to cache 1 extra, 2 extra seeds, up to 10, 20 seeds, eventually 30 seeds in less than half an hour. So they will eat 1 seed always, because they are not, I would say, they are not eating that much. They just eat what they need. But sometimes they cache much more than what they need.
Yeah.
So the threshold is really, for 1 seed they eat, they should cache at least 1 seed. And then it's extra. And this extra is important for the rodents, because seeds might be infested. They might be taken by another agoutis or akushis that will catch the seeds elsewhere, might be taken by predators. So it's important that they catch more than what they really need. Because even if the seed is infested, when the seed is infested prior to be cached, they might deteriorate. And so it's a loss. So if they only cache 1 seed for 1 eaten, that's not enough. They really need to cache a lot of seeds. And they are clever guys. They do a good job.
Is the reason that seeds are often cached near or in objects such as logs, or the fact that seeds with hard endocarp are more common in soil near such objects than out in the open, is this due to providing visual landmarks for relocating them?
Yes, indeed. We have to understand their behavior. You have to think as a rodent. So you just go to the ground. You don't look the ground from above. Your size of my size it's a different world. But when you're a rodent, you're really at the edge of the ground level. You have to look at, what do you see? Of course, you see a lot of stump and trunks and palms, bays. You see that because your eyes are looking this way, not like that. They're always like looking at because when you look like that, you look for the predators which are around you. You know, you understand that. So it's very important. So you're not looking this way. We are looking this way. I'm looking this way. But the rodents, they are looking the other way. And then, what do they see? They see trees, logs, burrows, pile of litter. So when they have to catch the seeds, they just go here and here, close to objects that are some kind of landmark for them, easy to retrieve the seeds. And also it's because then they can, when they use the forest, they have path in the forest, they go around these marks, in fact. So they are more like, they have more chance to retrieve their seeds.
Definitely. So in the paper that I read, what are the other reasons for burying seeds near objects? Because I came across the favorable characteristics of the substrate. So whether it's easier to dig or whether it's less likely for competitors to find it because of the olfactory senses, and whether it's drier soil and things, that's going to affect whether others will find it or not.
Indeed, object, for instance, if it's a base of a palm, you have accumulation of leaves, dead leaves. You have a lot of humus there, soil that is an environment which is really favorable to germination of seeds. So I would not say that the animals will think about that, but by caching the seeds in this litter, first it's easy to cache because it's deep, it's not too difficult to dig, and so it's a better environment for the seeds, and indeed it's better also for the survival of the seeds, because they are protected from other animals, competitors, and parasites, insects. And I don't know about if really they smell it. Probably do that in the early days after they catch the seeds, but with time the odor is just fading away.
Yeah.
So they will, in fact, they will retrieve the seeds eventually by memory, because they remember very well. I've seen them. They are just searching, where did I put my seeds last time? Oh, well. So they just go around and they sniff a little bit, then tuck, and suddenly they stop and they dig. And I've seen rodents, for instance. I was from my platform and observing the base of the trees and palms, and I just saw the agoutis. They were just running, stop, and dig. Take the seeds, just move away. So they do have a very good memory. So it's they are very clever. They are very interesting animals.
Yeah. Please may you expand on the unexplored idea that burying by rodents might stimulate interaction with endomycorrhizal fungi?
Yeah. It's more frequent in Africa than in America. It's something that is specific to Africa, especially ectomycorrhiza. But for the endomycorrhizae, indeed, when the seed is germinating above the ground first, I would say, imagine that the rodent is not taking away the seeds. It just seeds lie on the ground. So the roots will just try to find a way to go into the soil. So the contact is weak. You can imagine the roots are just trying. You just leave a seeds of avocado, for instance, on the paper. You see the roots is not very happy. It just, whereas if you put the seeds in the ground, then the tap root will go directly, and then you have the secondary roots will go, and this will favor the contact with the soil and with fungi spores. So then you have a better colonization of roots by fungi.
Yeah, definitely. So why? Sorry.
Yeah, no. So the fact that they catch the seeds is not only good for survival, but also for increasing the chance that the roots will be in contact with fungi. So it's really important. Yes.
Why do the rodents recache seeds? So they will go and find them and recache them?
Yeah, this has been studied by my colleague Patrick Hansen, and he observed many seeds that were dug out, dug out. Yeah, they were retrieved by rodents, and then they were excising the root and recaching them. And they observed that seeds might be recached several times. So why do they do that? Is probably for several reasons. First, when they arrive, there's a lot of seeds, they catch them very quickly.
Yeah.
We observe that with palm seeds. They catch them just like, oh, let's do it very quickly, otherwise somebody is coming. Then in fact, after I said, oh, well, it's not very well hidden. So I should move it further away. So they come back, take it, and recache. And we've seen that seeds could be carried like over 200, 400 meters sometimes. Like this,
wow.
It's like a ricochet. It's just a ricochet of caching. And so that's one reason. And the second reason, I think, is also just to avoid the seeds to be taken by another animals.
Yeah.
And Patrick Janssen called that he describes that as a phenomenon where the seeds become like a zombie. Census Janssen, Patrick Janssen. That means that the seeds is dead and alive, because when you cut the root, the seeds cannot germinate anymore. But it's still alive, like a zombie. You know, you're dead but you're alive. So he called that zombie seeds.
Brilliant. May you explain your research on the fact that hunting increases dispersal limitation in the tree carapace?
I say that when you have a lot of seeds that are piling on the ground during the fruit season, rodents will come, take all the seeds, catch them. Okay, it's good. 100% produced, 100% removed. Many of them being cached, few being eaten by rodents, and few being eaten by peccaries, pigs in general, wild pigs. Okay, and if you remove the peccaries, and if you remove the agoutis, then you observe that seeds are piling on the ground again, whereas they should not. So hunting limit dispersal of the seeds, because there's not anymore, there's not animals to disperse the seeds anymore.
Absolutely. How can your proposed rapid assessment protocol be used to prevent this?
Well, the rapid assessment protocol aim at monitoring rather than really preventing this. But so on one hand, we count the fruits on the ground, we count the seeds that remain on the ground, and we evaluate that, say, 50% of seeds are removed, 50% are still there, rotting, which is bad. So we could also prevent this by showing people that when seeds accumulate, they are not recruiting. So that's a way we found to educate people by rapidly showing that seeds are not removed when there's a hunting pressure.
Yeah. We're going to move on a little bit, but what studies led you to conclude that you discovered a new species of carapace?
As I said, at some point, I talk about Carapace surinamensis, Carapace procera. And for many years in French Guiana, in Guyana in general, in Africa, we used to call these trees Carapace procera, thinking that it was the same species in Africa and America. But it's not the case at all. We know now that the Carapace in the Guianas, it's surinamensis, the name surinamensis, but also Carapace guianensis, which was the first species described by the botanist who named Carapace. So I moved to Guyana for a meeting, and then I saw fruits, on the table of a friend, and I said, interesting. It looks like Carapace surinamensis. And they say, oh, really? We always call that Carapace guianensis. I say, well, but it's strange. So we moved to the field. I came back, in fact, and I moved to the field. It was 2 years later. 2000, I saw the fruit, dry fruit. And then 2 years later, I came back and in Guyana, and I went to the field and I saw the tree and some old fruit on the ground. And I saw the tree and I say, uh-oh, no, that's not the species I know from Suriname and from Guyana. And I say, might be a different species. It might be a new species. So that's the way I just saw the tree and the fruit and I say, no, it's another species. And then we work a lot to rename it as a Carapace acuri, which is named after the agouti in Guyana.
Yeah. So as you've mentioned, you've also done lots of work in Africa, concluding that the large rodents, might pronounce this wrong, Chrysotomis kivuensis, may contribute to the seed dispersal and successful seedling establishment of the large seeded species C. grandiflora. Did you find any clear differences in these paleotropical rodents in their caching behavior compared to their neotropical counterparts?
Yes, these rodents are totally different compared to akushis and agoutis. The exact name it's simple. Chrysotomis, that's a genus, and kivuensis. Kivu is the name of the lake in Eastern Africa. Kivu. So kivuensis, that means from Kivu. So it's the rodents, Chrysotomis, from Kivu. In fact, it's simple. It's an easy way to remember the name of scientific name. It's in the beginning, it's not easy. So this rodents is a Muridae. It's a very different group compared to the American one. American one are caviomorph, and this one is a Muridae. And exactly, it's a nocturnal rodents compared to the caviomorph rodents in French Guiana, agoutis and akushis, that are diurnal. So they are living in a different world.
Right.
And the Chrysotomis are not using logs for their burrows, for their home, I would say, for their to roost. They are burrowing. They are using burrows. So they catch the seeds, many seeds in their burrows, and some of them are cached above the ground, but they do not dig the ground really. They just do some hole, put the seeds, cover with litter, and that's it. I would say. So the big comparison, I was to summary to review that. They are in Africa. They are nocturnal. They use burrow. And they catch a lot of seeds in the burrows and some above the ground.
Yeah. Have you found that one of them is a lot more successful than the other?
Wow. Success. It's just two different environments.
Yeah.
And seeds are adapted to those different environment conditions. Success is that with the rodents in both continents, both tropical forests, the success can be measured by the fact that trees are recruiting.
Yeah.
If the trees are producing seedling, that means they are successful. Then the question is rather about the number of seeds that is needed for recruiting, and that for sure it differs a lot between environment, but it also depends between species. So
yeah,
more important is that one seedling, at least one seedling, replaced one adult.
Yeah.
Well, especially because one adult is both male and female, so it's better to have two adults, one to exchange gene and so on. So I would say two seedlings for two adults.
Yeah. Well, that is all my questions. So unless you have anything else you'd like to expand upon or anything you'd like to ask me.
Yeah, I could, since we are speaking about how, yeah, how were you, how to say that? Your questions were really very good. I mean, I would say it's surprising how precise they were and how you were really asking about specific detail. So I was wondering, how do you, been living in UK, how do you see those environments? How do you imagine them? It's, I think it's important.
Well, I've read quite a few of your papers, and I've got a good idea of it in my head, and sort of compiling different sources together, and sort of cross-referencing and seeing different perspectives on it. I think it does build a good image in your mind, and you can have a good idea of it. And also, you see similar things on TV. Obviously not in as much detail or anything, but you do have a good idea of it. And I am quite passionate in conservation and biology, biochemistry, all sorts. So if I'm passionate in it, and so I have the interest to read extra and do extra research and things. And so it really, it sort of sparks my passion in things.
And how do you, so you see the forest from the media, in fact. But, have you ever been in a tropical rainforest? Have you walked in a tropical rainforest? Never.
No, I haven't, but I would love to.
Oh, well, we'll be glad to help to promote that, because really it's, I don't know, but you should go to see those forests, especially in Guyana, which is easier when you're in UK than going to the French Guiana or Suriname. But in Guyana, there's a beautiful forest where I've been working, where I discovered this species of carapa in Iwokrama, and that should be the one of your plan in the future. I will really encourage you to go there, and if I can help to in some way, let me know, because really you will see it's unique forest. And the same way you could go to Gabon. We have there's a lot of colleagues in UK that are working in Gabon, and in Oxford, especially Yavinder Mali. I'm going to give a talk at the Oxford Center. Well, it will be a visio, but it's a talk at the Oxford Center for Tropical Forest. And Yavinder and the group there are working in Gabon, and it will be good for you at your age to see these two different forests, because not, I'll say that all rainforests are not all the same. They are all different. We say, we people, we human beings, we are all parents, we are all different. The key expression here at the museum. It's the same for the rainforest. They are all parents at some levels, but they are so different at the same time because they evolve differently. We human beings, we evolve with different culture, different languages, different spiritual thoughts. Forests, they are just evolving differently, although there are different animals there. And I would say that if you can develop and get some support, I will encourage you to go to Guyana first. It's really a fantastic forest, and to go to Gabon, and then it will open your mind after, because your generation is well, you're going to face a different world than the world I've been studying. I'm looking still, because after 37 years now of studying French Guiana and other forests, I'm still lucky to be able to revisit this forest and to be in the same forest as the one behind me. It didn't change that much since I've been there in '84. So you're lucky that, and I hope that one day you could visit the forest behind me and see that, wow, it's unique. It's a superb environment, rich, and we need that, especially for us in UK, you and me in Paris, in Europe. We need those forests to minimize the temperature. And I have another question. Did Greta Thunberg influenced you in some ways?
Well, yes, I've read her book, and I follow her on social media, and I'm absolutely behind what she's doing. I think it's amazing.
Because when I opened this Zoom session, and suddenly I had the impression I was talking to a kind of Greta Thunberg. I mean, it's like that. I mean, you're so aware, you are, your questions are really straightforward, very precise, and you read all those papers. I'm quite surprised that you read all that science, because it's not easy to read, especially when you're a teenager. Honestly, when I was 17 or 16, I don't know. I don't think I've read those articles. No, really. Well, I was interested in roots and trees already. Definitely, I had books, but well, that's impressive.
I really love it. So it's easy for me because I love it, and yeah, I enjoy spending my time doing it. So and stuff, things like this is amazing for me, and hopefully it's going to, people who are listening are going to be more passionate about it and have more interest and be talking about it, because that's what we need to be able to conserve the forest, because they're so important in so many aspects of our lives, and we need them just as much as they need us to protect them. So
sure, yeah. Well, it's a great pleasure to talk to you, and I hope my French was my English was not too Frenchy. And one last point is that I think it's the first time I'm speaking to well, young. I mean, the younger student we have at the museum, I will say they are 20, 22, generally 22, 23 years old when they are engaged in this master program.
Mm-hmm.
And my earliest experience, I will say that when I was 30, student, we were 20 years, or even a bit younger than this. When I was working on Barro Colorado Island in Panama, and student came for, you know, this kind of internship, and he just came to visit, and he wanted to work with me, and we published. After that, we worked together. He came back, and we published papers together. It's one of my best friends now in this 10 years. Yeah, it's a long process. I mean, it's a life project, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
When I was imagine that now I'm 60, and I started my career at 23, in fact. So very young, not so just several years for you from now. Mm-hmm. And I was just launched like that in a rainforest with zoologists from the museum, and I was just like, wow, that is great. That is beautiful. That is I'm from Paris, so rainforest was very something I could not expect to visit one day. I had the chance, and I use it. I would say also it's very important. We talk a lot about rodents, which is a very interesting topic, but we are more, I would say, in the future, we are more and more interested in what is happening in the canopy, in the treetops.
Yeah.
So I could speak, if you wish, another day. I could tell you about what we are doing in the canopy, and I'm sure that you will be amazed by what we are photographing and what we are studying and how we do that. The story about moving into the canopy, because I mean, for sure we are on the ground, but climbing trees, it's another really, I would say, it's a very intense experience.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you're 30, 40 meters above the ground in the tops, and then it's another world.
Yeah,
it's another
absolutely.
world.
If you have any papers on this or anything, feel free to
yes, we do.
send them to me, and I'll link them onto this so any viewers can have a read.
Absolutely. So, and I also have some video, some YouTube video where we are showing what we are doing. So anytime if you want to have more information about that, I'm ready to explain that to you.
That'll be
It would be a
amazing.
great pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for listening. I'll stop the recording now.